In this lesson, I'm going to use simulation techniques to sculpt two types of hoodies. My initial plan was to sculpt this baggy oversized hoodie and this sweatshirt, but I've decided to do something more challenging. This hoodie is going to be fairly challenging, so it's going to stay on the docket. But for the second item, I've decided to mix these two street style clothing. Well, actually, one of them is a techie cropped jacket, and the other is a distressed hoodie and baggy shirt hybrid. I think these two items can be combined to create something interesting. As I mentioned, I'm going to be using simulation techniques to resolve the necessary folds that these clothing need. And like all other clothing articles for this project, the final result will be controlled by a lower resolution proxy. Once again, the advantage of this technique is that you get to bake in creasing data where it will more than likely always stay the same. And on top of that, you get to mix in simulated creases from an nCloth driven proxy as the character animates. Just like with the previous clothing articles, I will be running some preliminary tests once the sculpting is done to see how well the clothing item will simulate in Maya with a rig. All right, let's get started. I'm going to use a very different approach for this particular asset. When it's done, it's not going to be draping over the character. Drapery will come during simulation. But let me just get into it and showcase what I'm talking about when I have some of this thing done. So I'm going to append a cylinder and start off with the sleeve. All right. Okay. And scale this down. Turn on poly wireframe. And this particular sleeve for this fit is very long. It extends very far up the forearm. All right, then I'm going to take the Z Remodeler tool and do some deletion of some of these edges. So we'll do delete, edge loop complete, and start clearing some of these out. I'm going to go a little farther, take these out. And I'm going to store a copy of this for the second hoodie, which has a shorter wristband. I'm going to take my move tool and start shaping this. Turn off dynamic. Start shaping this. One thing I should do is go group by normals just so that I have the caps. I can isolate the caps and delete them. I don't need them. Turn on double. And it's important to have this thing draping over the palm correctly. Another thing I'm going to do is delete every other edge across. I'll come over here and start clearing out some of these to simplify this. All right, so that's simple enough. I'm going to go back to shaping this. This piece is going to be isolated from the main jacket. It'll only be attached by the proxy mesh that's created to simulate the finished jacket. So it will be wrapped to the proxy. I think I did the same thing for her bubble jacket in the last lesson. This is fairly long, but that is how long it is. In the reference. It even might be a little longer. So this is a good starting point for this piece. make sure it's not crooked. I'm going to go to deformation and do a polish by features just to clean it up a bit, and that should be good. All right, I'll go activate symmetry, mirror and weld to get it to the other side. All right, so this one is for put it in a folder for the oversized hoodie, and let me work on the second one. I'll go through the same process. Okay, that should be enough. I'll activate symmetry, mirror and weld, and this would be for the crop jacket hoodie. Okay, so that's the beginnings of the wristband for both of these. All right, next thing I'm going to do is get the waistband or the elastic waistband for the oversized hoodie. That would also be a cylinder. Make sure to activate symmetry, move this thing down. And scale it in like that. And I don't want it to drape too far down. Now this baggy hoodie is really huge, but I really don't need it covering all the work that's been done on this jeans. So I'm going to try to keep it fairly high, maybe somewhere around here. So it won't exactly be the same as the length from the reference. I'll come over here, start deleting most of these edges. Actually, I'll just lose all of them. It's a lot easier to manipulate this thing. And I'll group by normals to isolate the shell and delete hidden. Also from this front view, I think this is a good thickness. I think this would be a nice width, but maybe just a little bit more. Let me just give it a little bit more. I'll have the opportunity to adjust it later on. I just don't want it to be so baggy. Ultimately, all the creasing I'm going to do in simulation should produce an overhang of about that much, like there, like that. Right, so that's a lot. But when the hands come down during simulation, it will behave normally. I just need it to behave normally. So I might end up, cutting it and making it like this. I want it to be oversized, but not so big, or maybe just sticking with the really large size works too. But I'll have the opportunity to change the how wide the elastic is at any time. In addition to the results from the simulation, I'll be able to change it at any time. Just like the jeans, if you remember, I went ahead and changed a lot of things about how wide it was and how low this crotch area was. So yeah, this is the beginnings of the elastic band, and I'm going to leave it straight, and that's fine. Now with the second hoodie, it doesn't have any elastic band. It hangs like a t-shirt. Okay, so I'm going to get started on the torso portion of the oversized hoodie. I'm going to append a cube, and I will move it down. I'll turn on symmetry, make sure that the operations are happening on both sides correctly. And what I'm going to do is cut out holes for the arms and the neck. So I'll just go to the Z-Ray Modeler tool, and a good easy way to do this is also to polygroup. So I'll polygroup polyloop, and just go like that. Make sure I have the right axis so I can isolate that part, and just isolate that and delete hidden. And I'll do the same for the arm portion of this, but in this instance I think I could just delete some faces. It's not a big deal, so I'll just go delete single poly. I'll just start to clear some of these out. I'll just make a copy of this. I'm probably going to do this again a few times, but for now, I think this should be fine. And I'm gonna group by normals, and so I can get the bottom part open too. I'll go delete hidden, and now I should have something that is good enough for editing. So I'll start moving things around. And I'm gonna scale this because I want the body part of it to extend over the deltoid, because these things are usually like that. They're very baggy, and the arm does not really extend all the way up the arm. It's sort of halfway down the arm that you get the sleeve extending from. I think I could delete some more of these faces. It's not a big deal to have something like that. Scale. And perhaps this could be the spare copy that I will use for the other one. I'm going to scale this thing a little bit more. And looks pretty good. Move it a bit. Scale it out some more. Actually, a lot more, so I can have a lot of slack. I'm going to be, this is one of the main portions that's going to be simulated to get the ruffling needed to connect to this elastic. So I do need enough slack, a lot of excess, so I can scale in front to back the same way I do side to side. And this should probably extend a lot more. And I think that's baggy enough. That's not bad. So I'm going to duplicate this to keep that copy. And then I'm going to, now I want to shape this thing, and I want to be able to smooth these borders as I shape it to a good size. But a simpler approach really would just be to close holes, and it will add a different poly group and just give me an opportunity to do the shaping that I want, and I'll delete them when it's when I have what I want or something close to it. Now with this particular oversized hoodie, there is a lot of there's a sort of big hook at the bottom to receive this. There's a big hook at the bottom to receive the hoodie, so I have to be mindful of that. It should be enough. I'll just delete hidden. No. This is actually the right operation. I forgot to hold down shift when I reduce mini connected. So you want to hold down shift so that when you change this mini connected to 1, it's actually affecting the smooth brush. But the way I did it is also a good way. Just sort of close the holes and then shape it the way you want. And then you can lose them. I'm gonna bring this down. And one thing I'm going to continually do is resample by Z-remeshing, and also make sure that I give a little hook here in the back for hoodies. If you look at the panel, there's a little bit of a dip here. Definitely not more aggressive than the dip at the front, but in this particular case, this is a unique design, and the hoodie sits in this sort of well, like that. It's more of a shape like that. I think that's pretty baggy. I'm going to polish by features just to get a little bit of a cleanup. And yeah, this is good. I'm doing some shaping. One thing I did want to make sure of is that I have a nice cushion here so that it drapes. It has some room to drape onto the character at simulation time. This is basically using my nCloth like Marvelous Designer. Or somewhat, right? It's not true panels, but you are somewhat simulating panels. I have to make sure there's enough overhang here, so I'm going to need to tuck it into the elastic. And the longer it is, actually, the more ruffling I will get. And I do want a lot of ruffling at the base. I also want to make sure that this opening for the incoming sleeve is the right shape. Check the back. And this doesn't look bad. Let me polish by features again. Get some nice straightening, and then I'll Z-remesh so that topology continues is resampled to support the current shape that I'm fighting to create. Okay, looks good. Let me mask this bottom half here and do some scaling just to make it align. And I think that might be it. This is good. Maybe a little bit more finessing of this hole. You make sure that this hoodie opening is big enough to accommodate what I'm seeing, and that this overhang over the deltoid is enough. I feel like I might be undershooting. pretty baggy. Make this more circular. See what Zbrush gives. Might be good enough. Parts of me still wants to extend it a little bit more, but I think I have enough extension. Yeah, I think this should be enough. Yeah, that should be fine. Off transparency and do just a little bit of a polish by features. Close to being ready for simulation. Just probably need some more topology, which is easy to resolve. Let me see what I can get with a 0.5. Duplicate this. Okay, that's not bad. And with this, I could do another polish by features, get a little bit of a cleaner result. And this is a good piece for the torso. I'm starting to realize that I might have gone a little bit too far with how long these are. So I'm going to try to scale them down just a little bit. If it doesn't really give enough room to get a nice sleeve. Well, I'll get the sleeve, it's just that it's a really short area that this sleeve will span across. So I might have to make some accommodations here and continue to scale this. Let me turn off local. Oh, it's not local. Turn on local symmetry so that I can scale these on either side. Okay, turn that back off. Yeah. It's gonna be good enough. All right, so that's the torso for the oversized hoodie, ready for simulation. All right, so I'm gonna put this into the folder for the oversized hoodie, hide it, and move on to the other one. Now for the other street hoodie, it's a really complex configuration. I'm going to start by using this previous copy. I'm gonna scale it in some. And what I want to try to do here is start separating it into its various different sections. I'm going to select this lower half and group visible just to get a different poly group. And I am going to isolate the top and split hidden. Make sure both of them are showing. This top one has a very unique shape. It dips and it's significantly baggier and it extends. Front is straight, but there is definitely a dip here that needs to be emphasized heavily. And with this, it doesn't have this aggressive, it's just a regular hoodie panel. So it's lower than the backside, but it's not that low. It's about here. It should be about enough of a dip for it. And there is a fair amount of overhang over the deltoid. But I'm not going to push it too far. Or maybe I should. Push it just a little bit. Because this top cropped portion is very baggy. see how much it's hanging over. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, this is actually fair. I might be pushing these things too far past the glenoid cavity here, right? Which is around, I think it's around, yeah, around here. It's not dead center, it's probably here. So I am pushing it a little too far. I have to be mindful about that for the first one. But it's okay, because the first one is really oversized, and I do want that oversized feel. And if it's wrong, I can always change it after simulation when I come back. All right, then the bottom half, I'm going to do a mix of what this fit actually is, and I'm going to combine it with the second distressed fit, and then I'll eventually take it into Maya and make some additional modifications. And some cuts specifically that make it look more distressed, but I would need the sleeves for that. So I'm gonna hold off on the cuts and stuff until I get into Maya. There's a nice simple way I want to do it over there. But what I will do here is do the distressed portion of the bottom half. I'm going to do another separation. So I'm going to highlight this, group visible, and do another split hidden. So I create the last portion of it. And for this top portion, I probably should have done a little bit more work, a little bit more adjusting before I did this, but it's fine. I think I should be fine. I'll extend this outward, and there's this hanging portion of this from the second reference that I want to create. These little tattered pieces in the front and in the back. So what I'm going to do is first extrude this edge, go to the Z modeler, right click on the edge and go extrude edge loop, and I will bring it down just a little bit, about that much. And then I'm going to turn off symmetry and start doing some deletions. So the deletion would be these faces. I'll take this face, single poly loop, and start deleting these faces and that, right? Because that's what I'm seeing in the reference. And then for the back side, since I don't have anything telling me what it looks like in the back, I'm going to assume based off of what I see hanging in the back. And I'm going to just mirror this sort of effect in the back like that. And what I'm doing will make sense shortly. Let me take a look at this to see if I should delete one more. I think I should delete one more on either side. Yeah, and that should work. And then what I need now is some more extrusions on either side. So I'm going to right click on this edge, go extrude, and I just want one edge. I just want to be able to extrude one edge. So I'm going to come over here, and that should be what I'm looking for. I will move this out. Before I continue with this extrusion, I'm going to create the hanging panel that should receive this. As a matter of fact, I could extrude it directly from this piece. So if I could extrude it down. I hate doing these modeling operations in Zbrush, but actually no, I'll just append a plane. I'll append the plane, because I need two anyway. And I'm going to move this plane here. I'm going to reconstruct subdivision levels so I get a one-sided plane, and I'll just have it hang. Turn on double-sided. Okay, so this should receive whatever I'm going to extrude out of here. For this. And I do need another one in the back too. I'm going to duplicate, move it to the back because I'll be doing the same thing here too. All right, then I'm going to go back to extruding these edges. I'll grab this and extrude this edge. But I have to be very careful about how it receives it. This thing is going to fold into itself, so I want the other side. To go like that, and I will do another extrusion. And get this thing to fold over. Yeah, like that. I would even have to find a way to make sure that it stays like this by default, because it's just something nice in the reference that I want to preserve. It's going to be a fairly hard thing to stop from unraveling during simulation. I'll put one more edge loop here. Quick insert single edge loop. This will have some additional information to create this overhang. Okay, now all that's left to do is to connect this piece to the hanging piece. So I'm going to come over here, merge down, and extrude to connect the two. So I'll go Z remodeler, right click, extrude, single edge loop, and yeah, that should connect it at least one point. And then I'm going to have to figure out how to connect the other point by hovering over the point, right click, and I think there's a stitch. 2 points, I should be able to grab this. Yeah, and click on both of them and connect it. So I have something that's at least like a block out of the design I'm seeing in the reference, and I can figure out how I will try it as much as possible during simulation time when the character is moving to preserve this, because I'm pretty sure it might unravel and hang the way it wants to, which might not be a bad thing. We'll see how it works out. But I like this little fold, so I might end up doing like a component to component constraint to stitch it to this so that it keeps it no matter how much the character moves. All right, I'm going to do the same thing on the other side and do a few extrusions. So I will now also bring that in and merge down to connect it. And this time I should be able to just do a simple connect of the two. So I'll right click on the points. I'll go to the Z remodeler, right click on the points and do like a stitch by just selecting these 2 points. And okay, having a difficult time stitching this. Let me select this. Yeah, I'll stitch now. Okay, so this is somewhat of a combination of these two styles, at least for the torso portion. And the torso portion done, and some additional sculpting will be done further down the line. This is pretty much ready for sculpting, though. There's no simulation needed here because there's no ruffling needed that I need to bake in for this torso portion. For this cropped jacket, the only thing that will receive simulation is the sleeves. So let me dump this into its respective folder. So all these 3 pieces belong in this folder. Okay. And yeah, these are the beginnings of sort of a mix of those 2 designs. The rest of the tatters will happen. I will go to them in Maya because I feel more comfortable doing some of those cuts in Maya, but definitely do need the sleeves first before I move on to Maya. So yeah, this is the torso work for the second hoodie that we're creating for him. Before I move on to the sleeves of both hoodies that are going to be simulated, I'm going to add the final element of this cropped jacket that won't be simulated for any creasing at this stage. And what I'm talking about is the sleeve of this cropped portion of it. So I'm going to append another cylinder. And I will move it into position. Just group by normals first so I can separate the caps, delete hidden. And I could just do a Z remesh. It should reduce it down by some. Turn on double, and I will rotate it. Put it here. Shape it in preparation for how it's going to connect. And judging from what I'm looking at, I know that I have to decide whether or not I want some degree of tapering to the edge of this sleeve, and I do want some, but not that much. So I'm going to taper it a little bit here, like so. But I will make sure that this loose end of the torso moves up to meet it. So let me activate symmetry, mirror and weld. And just to help me shape it better, I'm actually going to lose all the edges. I can add them back later. So I'll right click and do a delete and just remove all these edges. It's just a lot simpler to shape it. To be very mindful of the slack. Make sure I'm at this loose hanging stage. I am picking a shape that will look good when it drapes. Yeah, that's a lot. It looks like it's going to be very big when it starts simulating during animation. But I think I don't think it's bad. Yeah, I'm looking forward to running the test. If I run a test with this and puts his hands down and it's just so big and so baggy, I might have to come back and make some decisions about how to proceed. Yeah, I might need to go run an isolated test on just this top crop part to see what it's going to look like. But I think this is a good starting point. And then the other thing I'm going to add is a proxy to simulate the buckles and the straps. I'm gonna add a cube. Actually, let me delete this and just use a plane. It's a lot easier to pare down. So reconstruct, delete higher, scale it down, and give it, I suppose I can give it some fake thickness with under geometry, dynamic subdivisions, dynamic, no smoothing, just give it some thickness. It's just like a placeholder to let me start seeing what those straps are going to look like as they're hanging out of this cropped portion. Kind of like that. Yeah, that looks good. And probably shouldn't bother with the buckle, but maybe it won't hurt to do that too. Let me do it. I'll pen down another plane. Move it. Reconstruct till I have about that much. Delete higher and just go to my Z modeler and just delete these faces and scale this up a bit. Just to simulate a simple buckle. Yeah, there's something to sit over there. And I will do with it the same thing I did. Actually, I might be able to just merge these two down. Yeah, and it will adopt the dynamic subdivision properties of that. So from here, I could just duplicate, move this to the back. And yeah, this should be fine. Should sit over there. And I can merge these down, activate symmetry, mirror and weld, and that should let me know what to expect from this. As far as whether or not the ideas are going to work well together. All right, so that's it for the part of this that is not going to be simulated. For creasing, all this will be sculpted to finish. It looks good. I do have one more thing to accomplish here though. Or at least to block out, and it's a pouch that sits on top of the sleeve. I almost forgot about that. Let me delete this and use another plane, and move it into position, reconstruct, delete higher, reconstruct, delete higher, and extrude single side to get a cube. And scale it down. Just remind myself that this is going to be a placeholder. What I do need to see what it's going to contribute, how it's going to contribute to the silhouette. And I could put an edge loop, insert single edge loop, and just place it in the center here. So I can adjust this to be flush with the surface correctly. It'll eventually have to be connected, but this is a good starting point. Nice little block out. And I could put another edge loop here and just start giving it that feel of a pouch. It will need a zipper, so I have to be ready for that. If it in fact needs to be a lot larger than I'm envisioning it to be right now.
Yeah, this thing looks really large. Let's see how it turns out. Okay. One thing I do have to remember about this pouch is that it's a lot rounded. So I should probably be looking to add some more edge loops just to get a better idea of the final shape. Let me add 2 more. And I should perhaps move it a little higher up the arm to give enough slack. Give enough room for this portion. The more I look at the sleeve, the more it feels like it's really large. I'm starting to think if I should reduce it some more. Yeah, I think this might be good. This, for certain, I have ignored something important. I do need a little bit more. Let me scale this, flatten it, and then I might want to extrude up. Just to create a little bit of excess to go in there. It's going to be attached to the inside of this with a component to component constraint to simulate it. And the same thing should be done with this here in the solo, and give it just a little bit of excess. So I think this is good. And make sure that I mask this and rotate it a little bit higher just so there's less clashing. And the more I look at this, I feel like I have a bad shape here that I'll pay a price for. To be honest, this is gonna be very hard to see how this is gonna work from just here. I'm going to definitely have to go run a simulation test like as soon as possible before I make any commitments.
Okay, it's time to create the sleeves that are going to be simulated. And in the case of this baggy one, I'm actually going to use the same prop, but I'll just scale it down because this one is going to be a lot baggier than the one for the cropped jacket. I'm going to do this rotated, group by normals, isolate and delete hidden, and then remesh at a very low value just to bring it down, and move it into position. Scale it out a bit. Try to. Okay, that's about good. Come down a bit. Okay. Next thing I'm going to do is use one of these. I think it's the deformer. Yes. And I'm going to increase the count to about that much. And then I'm going to select the end here and scale it down. And that should be what I'm looking for. Next thing I'm going to do is actually accept this and then use another one, deformer, reduce the count to about that. Select these two and stretch this thing out because I need excess to be able to get the kind of folds that I want. So when I'm simulating it going in, I can expect to get a lot of folds, but this might be too many folds, so I'll see about there. Ultimately, I can change this in Maya if it is not long enough and I need more folds, but I think this should be fine. This result, actually, I could do one more thing. I could scale this a little bit more over there and accept. Okay, let me just duplicate this just in case I need this copy. And for the connector, I will make sure this extends down to connect to the rest of it. Might want to adjust this to get a little straighter result. Yeah, this should give me something good. And if it's not, additional adjustments be made in my, I'm going to activate symmetry, mirror and weld, and that should be it for the, well, I do need to make some adjustments here. Ultimately, I'm going to come back. I'm going to have to come back and really work on this. Okay, so I'm not too worried. All right, so that's it for the oversized hoodie. I'm going to duplicate, or actually this one. Yeah, this one might be fine. So I'm going to drag this into the oversized hoodie folder, and I'm going to start working on the one for this version. Now this one is a lot smaller, and I really want it to be snug on the wrist. And even this might be a little too large, so I'm going to bring it down some more, about that. Yeah, I don't really want the tightness that's in the reference for this crop jacket. I do want something slightly baggier. And if it doesn't look good, I'll make the changes. But let me look at transparency to see where I'm at. Yeah, this is not bad. This should create some interesting creasing. Let me make it just a little bit smaller. All right, that should be good. And then I could, once again, use a deformer to extend this portion
to location. Now I'm contemplating one thing I don't want to do is give myself more material to collide with everything. So if I can get away with just having this in here and not actually connecting to anything, I will, but I might not be able to get away with that. So I might need to have this sleeve connect to this torso, because ultimately the eye is never really going to go all the way. Actually, it will. The eye will occasionally go in here and see what's going on there. So yeah, all this piece, let me accept it, will have to connect to this one. Right. I could do it here, I could do it in Maya, it doesn't really matter where I do it. I think this could use a little bit more extension. I'll add the edge loops in Maya as I see fit. Yeah, but if I connect this to this, so yeah, ultimately I could do the connection in Maya when I'm done. Turn on double, activate symmetry, mirror and weld. Yeah, that's actually what I'm going to do. After I simulate this and get the creases I want, I will attach it to this piece before bringing it back into Zbrush. When I do go for simulation, I will have to even increase the topology of all this stuff because I won't get enough good folds. So this topology is going to also go up, and then I'm going to do a bridge and connect them. I want to increase this because it looks like it's going to be a problem, or probably not. Yeah, increase all. Just get rid of that crease. That's it for this stage. So it's time to move to Maya and get the parts of this that need to be simulated. All right, so the prep work for this simulation, specifically for the wrist or specifically for the arms, is really important. I have to do a handful of things. So I created a copy of the torso right here. I'm gonna isolate it. I'm gonna clear out the wrists. As I've showcased prior, this thing is not perfectly symmetrical. It's an error that I have to deal with. And it's gonna be an issue until it's time to get out of ZBrush with this fully textured asset. Then I'll worry about what has to be done to make it perfectly symmetrical. Okay, so here I'm going to lose a part of it, lose the wrist, and then all I really need is part of the arm. So I'm just going to delete these rows so I can delete the entire torso and this leg. And then the next thing I need is an extrusion of this edge. I need an extended edge. I'm going to go to modeling, edit mesh, extrude, and looks like I'm gonna have to do them one at a time. So I'm gonna go here, mesh, extrude, level, just pull this thing out. Do the same thing here. Go edit mesh, extrude, level, and extend it out. And just to get a better collision surface, I can add some edge loops. Insert edge loop, and maybe 8 should be fine, and 8 over there. Okay. And so that should be the sleeves. I should be able to just separate them now. So I'll go mesh, separate, and I'll go edit mesh, delete history, delete by type, history. All right, then what I'm going to do is grab all the sleeves I need to simulate. So this is one for the baggy, oversized hoodie, and this is the one for the cropped hoodie, and this is the arm. And actually I should separate these two. I want them to be separate meshes so I get different creases on both sides. So I'm going to go mesh, separate, make sure I only have two pieces. It's like, yeah, it's two pieces. And I'm gonna grab this, go modify center pivot, and move these like this, and then just rotate it 90 degrees. Actually, then put it in a group. Let me take it back and group, and then modify center pivot and move it like this and rotate it 90 degrees because I want the simulation to go against gravity. And I will do the same for this. And I'll group it, modify center pivot, move it, rotate it 90 degrees, minus 90. Okay, I should be ready for the sleeve simulations now. All right, the rest of this stuff I don't really need right now, because right now it's time to focus on the simulation. So I'm gonna hide these temporarily. Oh, even these I didn't need. Hide that. Hide that. And also the pockets. Don't need them. All right, so this is the simulation ready scene for everything. I'm going to put the baggy hoodie sleeves on their own layer, oversized sleeves scene. Over here, call it crop sleeves. And actually, I realized that I do want to at least have these over there as some kind of a guide. So I'm going to separate them too. I'm going to go mesh, separate, and just grab them, group one side, modify center pivot, and just move it. Just rotate it minus 90 degrees on this side. And just have it there. Just at least tell me where to stop raising it, like around here is where I want to stop raising it. Ready for the sim. I didn't need this head. I'm going to use it actually later. I'll hide this. Just shade these a different color, so everything that's going to be simulated is just very clearly gray. And these are like colliders. There is one more piece I've completely forgotten about, and that's the collider that's going to ride these things up. So I'm going to create a polygon cylinder. Take it out. Face, delete the cap, and go to vertices, open that up like that, and just scale it up, move it to location. It's going to be like a cup, like a piece like that. Things up. So I'll duplicate, go on the other side too. just paint it red or something. It's a passive collider that's going to be animated. And this should make things ready for simulation. I'm going to widen this. A bit more so it doesn't force a shape design at the edges too much. At the outskirts, just wanted to push it up, let it react to the actual hand, nothing else but the hand. So I'm going to do the same thing here, and extend it like that, and down. Okay, so now the scene is ready for simulation, lighting, two-sided lighting. All right, to make sure that I'm getting high quality creases with these simulations, I am going to create copies of each and every one of these, everything that's going to be simulated. I'm going to create a copy of it, Shift P to get them all out, and this should be everything. And I'm going to hide the originals. Yeah, that's all the originals. I'll hide them and make sure that I'm using these high-res versions for simulation. So for something like this, I actually feel like I might have made a bad choice about the topology that I brought in here. I could fix it here, but I would rather fix it in Zbrush. So let's move on to Zbrush. So in Zbrush, I'm going to grab this mesh for the torso. I'm going to duplicate it and solo it. And I just want something that is evenly spaced topology. So I'm going to go into Z Remesher and I'm going to turn off Adapt, and I'm going to Z Remesh it. And actually I'm going to reduce adaptive size also down to 0, and then Z Remesh. And it should be moving more towards evenly spaced topology as I keep hitting Z Remesh. Yeah, so this is something that I will trust with nCloth a lot better. So I'm going to export this back to Maya, and I'll be back with this in Maya. All right, I'm here with everything in Maya. I'm going to start increasing the resolution of all these pieces. So I'm going to shift right click and go smooth and do like 3 subdivision levels, apply. And that is a lot, but that is about what I would need to get some good high quality creases. So 3 seems to be what I need. I'm going to do the same for these, apply. Yes, I think 3 is fair. For the sleeve, I might not want to risk it. I might want to try 4. Yeah, I'll do 4. Get some good creases. Do the same here. And here too. And here. Okay, so that should be enough geometry. Let me make sure these are all my simulatable. High res simulator. Okay. Hide this temporarily. This should have been hidden. Okay, so these are all the pieces that will be simulated, and they are now high res and ready to be simulated. I'm going to create a copy of these colliders for the second set of sleeves. I'm just going to duplicate them, just shade them a different color. that they are in fact different. I'll call this the top sleeve collider. Screen left, screen right. I'll just name oversized sleeve collider, screen left, screen right.
I'm going to get started with the simulation of the sleeves, and I'm going to get started with the oversized hoodie. So I'm going to hide all this stuff for the crop jacket hoodie. I'm going to go Shift B and put them all in a group along with the colliders, just so I can come back and use them. All right, so I'm going to turn these two into an nCloth. So I'll go to FX, nCloth, create nCloth, and I'll turn all of these into passive colliders and go create passive collider. And then I'm going to set a key. Actually, what I should have done, I should disable the nucleus for now. So I'll disable it so nothing computes, so that I can set keyframes. And I'll temporarily put this in a group so that I can click this. Let me give myself 1,000 frames, which might even be a little too much, but I'll set a key. I want to get different results, so I'm going to do anything that's going to help with that. So I'm just going to have these move at either a different speed. So I'm going to have to push them all the way till they get up here. This is where I want it to stop. And with this one, I will set a key, do a little bit of an antic, and then force it to go up a lot faster. All this just to see if it see what it generates in the way of different simulation type. Now I'll go back to the nucleus and re-enable the nucleus, and then unhide my sleeves. And what I'm going to also do now is create a transform constraint so that this thing is pinned and it doesn't fall. So I'll go end constraint and I'll create a transform constraint so it holds in place while the simulation is done. I'll go edge and go transform constraint. All right, and now all that's left to do is just to hit the play button. So I'm going to hit play, or I can also go to the FX button and do the start interactive playback. So either way works. I'm going to hit play. Actually, I did forget to do one thing, and you can already see that the simulation is very micro, very granular. I don't want that. I want harder material. So I'm going to take this back, and I'm going to make sure these materials are a very hard material type. So I'll go to the nCloth shape node and dynamic properties and go to presets and make sure I'm using something really thick like leather or burlap, either thick leather or even one of these, there's a denim I think too, which I usually trust with things like this. Yeah, heavy denim. I'll go with the heavy denim and do the same thing here. Heavy denim, replace. I'm also going to go back to the nucleus, disable it. And these keys, I might have been too ambitious with how far away they are. 320 frames is a lot, so I'm going to have them come down so that I get results a lot faster. And I'll go back. And yeah, I think I'm ready for simulation now. So I'll go back to the nucleus, enable it, and hit interactive playback. These are results from a simulation. First thing I notice is that the results are just too granular, and I can go try to change settings to make it a lot stiffer so that it doesn't produce so many granular folds. Giving it a little bit of rigidity could help not produce so much articulation. I'm going to duplicate this though, just to use for comparison. So I will duplicate this mesh and move it to the side, so I remember what my first results were. And then I'm going to go back, disable the nucleus. That's not the only thing I would also like to change. It's just taking too long to simulate, so I do want to bring these numbers down and have something closer to that, so I can have completed simulation by then. And yeah, I'm going to try rigidity first. So I'm going to try put in a 0.1 rigidity to see what that does. Because I do want to stick with the denim. If this is problematic, I'll just switch to a different preset. I actually do want to try see if thick leather would produce better results. Let me try thick leather instead. Sets thick leather. All right, and I'm going to simulate and see what sculpt data I get. Yeah, this is just too much. I have to go back and turn the nucleus on. Forgot about that. And I can also reduce this timeline. I do want a little bit of settle. So I'm back at 0. Start the simulation. I like the results, but I'm going to stop the simulation for 2 reasons. One, I need better simulation settings. I do also need a collider that has a lot more integrity. It needs more topology because it's penetrating. So I do need better simulation quality. And also, I'm not too worried about how much creasing is going on up here because it will eventually settle. But I still do think that I might have too much slack. So I'm also going to duplicate this. Just have it on the side, just so I can compare my results over time. And I'm also going to start doing one at a time. Let me look at this again. Yeah, this is a lot of slack. I might have overshot how much material I need for this. What I'm going to do is disable these 2 nCloths so they stop simulating, and then I'm going to get rid of them. I will get rid of them and their dynamic constraints, and I'll go back to my original meshes. And I can hide this, and let me hit 5, 4. Yeah, that's a lot of slack. So I'm going to shoot for something more reasonable. I'm going to grab these 2, go to solo, go to F8 to go into component mode. Let me just go to vertices. And then I'm going to select, so make sure it's vertices. So these vertices and start to reduce. Make sure it's set to world, and I move it up to reduce the slack. It's just too much.
I bring that back and I look, so it would have to travel this much, and even that is still a lot. So I'm going to go like this and go like that. So this I feel like should be enough, and if it isn't, I'll have to come back and adjust the length again. All right, so for these two, it should be as simple as adding some more topology. So I'm gonna shift right click, go to smooth, and just add maybe 2 iterations of smooth. Yeah, that should be fine. And I will do the same for the other side. And I'm also going to do the same for these, even though they're not visible right now. I'll just make them visible and do the same. So when it's time for them, I won't have issues. Okay, so now that that's working, I did say I want to do one at a time. Okay, now I'm going to go back to smoothing these. So I'll go shift right click, smooth, and apply smooth 4 like I did before. So I have to make sure I have these two. Go create nCloth. And yeah, now I should be able to transform constraint and edge. And then what I'm going to do is go to this nCloth and turn off all everything on this side, just so I could do one at a time. Let me delete history on these. So turn these two into passive colliders. Let me do one at a time. Create passive collider. I'll do the same thing here. nCloth, create passive collider. I'm going to remove this antic. I put an antic here initially. I'm going to remove it and just stop making this too complicated. And then I'll go back to the keyframe one and just move these up so they're closer. And reset those keyframes. And we should be good. So I'm going to take this passive collider, disable it. All right, so it's time for simulation. Let's see what results are achieved from simulation. I do have to make sure I set this to thick leather. Same with the other side. And I have forgotten one thing. I do have to go to the nucleus and change the simulation settings to higher quality, because I don't want the penetration issues I experienced prior. So we should be good, and I'm going to start the simulation. Simulation is not bad, and I don't have any collision problems anymore. I still feel like there's too much articulation. It's actually not bad at all, but yeah, I just want just a little bit less detail, especially in the top here. These are the changes I'm going to make. I realized that with something so hard, heavy leather, that's why it echoes all the detail all the way up to the top. But just to be sure of that, I want to try to see if rigidity can help me. And I'm actually going to turn on both now. I don't mind that both of them are simulating. And I'm going to try to set rigidity to 0.1 just to see what happens. And that doesn't yield what I want. And I'll consider going back to my default material and using rigidity. But yeah, I think that's going to help get me something with just a good amount of folds, just not so much. And whatever ends up showing up top here, I can smooth out in Zbrush. So I'm going to simulate again, and I'll be back with the results. Okay, so here are the results with rigidity. It looks like it did minimize the amount of creasing, but it, as expected, treated the whole thing a lot more rigidly. So that's why this top area is sort of extending past the transform constraint. So this is not really
what I want. So what I'm going to do is go back to my default settings, just a regular cloth material. And I just don't want too much creasing to echo up here. If it's too heavy, if it's heavy denim, if it's thick leather, the creasing will extend all the way up to here because it's so hard that it stops bending around here and starts echoing the creasing all the way up closer to the arm. And I just really want most of the creasing to happen here and then to sort of taper away as it goes up here. So I'm going to return back to my default settings. I usually have my nCloth default settings stored as a preset. So I'll do replace and replace. And this will be different from the very first simulation I did because I have shortened the material, so I have less material. So I do want to see what it will produce with less material and the default settings. All right, I'm going to start the simulation and I'll be back with the results. These are the results. I did get the effect I want where the creasing doesn't happen up here, but the material is not heavy enough. And I think I have an idea of how to get exactly what I want. You see, if I were to be sculpting this, what I'm looking for mostly is primary shape. So I wouldn't be trying to sculpt the big creasing detail on something this dense. It would be a lot lower resolution. So I think the solution really is to reduce how much smoothing I do on this thing, and then the material will just not have the capacity to try to produce folds this granular. So I'm going to return my to 0, and I'm actually going to delete these cloth systems, and I'm going to go back to my original mesh. So I'll delete these 2 cloth systems, and I will Shift H to bring back my original pieces, Control D, so I have a fresh new set. And I'm going to do significantly less smoothing. So I'm going to Shift right click, go to smooth. And this time around, I'm going to go with maybe 2 iterations. Yeah, this should be about a good number. And I'll apply again. And I'll just delete history. And with this one, I would trust a lot more with that heavy leather. But I will first try the default settings for the cloth. So let me turn these 2 into cloth. And go create nCloth, and I'll do the typical thing of creating the transform constraint at the top. Constraint, transform constraint. And I'm going to sim this with the default settings first to see what this lower resolution mesh produces. And if it's still, the result is still not desired, then I'll start going and playing around with presets and settings until I get what I need. I'm gonna start the simulation again. Yes, this is exactly what I'm looking for. These type of folds, right? This one turned out really well. This is the kind of folding that I want. And this is how I want it to taper to the edge so I can connect it to the sleeve a lot better. But I think I could play around with the settings just a little bit. And it also simulates significantly faster. Let me duplicate these. I might find that I like it. At least one of the sides is pretty nice. And yeah, it's exceedingly fast. It's a nice big sculpt shapes. But what I'm actually going to do now is try with the heavy, with the preset for thick leather. I just want to see what it produces. So I'll go replace, and I'll do this again. Let me simulate. Yeah, this is it. This is perfect. This is pretty much what I'm looking for. That's exactly what I wanted to achieve, something like this. So definitely lower resolution
was a solution in this case, and it's giving me the type of folds I want, and I'm still able to have an edge that I can connect very easily. All right, so I'm going to duplicate this. This is probably going to be my final. I'm going to duplicate, move it to the side, and do the same thing here. And now that this is done, I'm going to go about disabling. Let me get this side. This would be oversized screen left, and this would have been our nCloth for our oversized screen right. Okay. So now that I got a great result for them, I'm going to disable the nCloth for these two, so I can move on to doing the same thing for the other, the cropped hoodie, which is shorter sleeve. I'm also going to disable all this stuff, all these dynamic constraints, because I no longer need them for now. And I can actually label them too. And the colliders, I can also disable them. Yeah. And another thing I'm going to do is mute them, mute their animation. Come over here and just right click and do mute. Just wanted to stay there, mute selected. Now that everything from the previous simulation has been disabled, I can just put them on a layer. Actually, I could just put it on this layer. Yeah, I'll put them all on the same layer and hide them. And now it's time to move to the other one. I'm going to put these sleeves for the oversized hoodie also here. And then I'm going to unhide this version, the cropped hoodie sleeves. This one is also way too much, so I can actually change the subdivisions here. I'm also going to go with the lower subdivision count. I also need to go with a shorter result, so let me actually come over here and see if I can. Okay, so 2 is about good. And a very easy way to manipulate the height of this is just to select both of them and go to my deformation tab and go to create a lattice, and it can be a 2x2. Yeah, a 2x2 lattice is fine. And I'll just isolate it, select the lattice points, and just reduce its height. I want about that much material. Yeah, this should create enough creasing. All right, so now I can select these two and just delete their history. And that should remove everything, the smoothing modifier and the lattice. And should be ready now for simulation. So I'm just going to hit interactive playback and see what I get. I'm going to stop this. I have, oh yeah, this is a very loose material. I always want to remember what is working, and what seems to be working is the thick leather. It's like sculpting on low resolution mesh or lower resolution mesh. And I'm going to do this again. I'll simulate. Yeah, it holds its form a lot better in preparation for the collision. And so now I reach location and give it an opportunity to settle. Okay, and you inspect the result. It's not bad, it's pretty cool. I do wish there wasn't so much articulation, so much creasing going on here, but I'll take this. It's not a bad result. And I'll try another one with some other settings. So I will duplicate these two and store them up here as the first iteration. Okay, that's interesting. So with that, I'm going to try another preset. Let me see what heavy denim does. Go to heavy denim, replace, and run an interactive playback. I want to stop this. One mistake I realized that I am making, and I should probably return back to heavy leather and try this, is that by the time it collides, it's moving too fast, right? So I don't want that. So I want to make sure that these are keyed to move fairly slowly, right? And I'm going to go to my Windows general animation editor, go to the graph editor, and make sure that I'm getting a nice ease in and ease out. Yeah, that's happening naturally. So I do have a nice ease. And so it slowly goes in, moves fast, and then slows in a lot better. Yeah, that fast movement is a little, will be costly. And I'm also going to give it a little bit more time so that it moves a lot slower. Yeah, and let me make sure I set a key here on both of them. And I'm going to go back, and I will switch this back to thick leather so I can see what this new animation produces with thick leather. I'm going to go interactive playback. Yeah, moving a lot slower now. Yeah, this is a pretty good result. I'll store that and get a few others. So I have a handful to pick from. I'm gonna move this and move that. Inspect it. Not bad. Try some other settings. Try this chainmail. Even though these don't actually represent the materials that these items represent, ultimately this is not really, this is almost like, just like I said, sculpting base detail for cloth. That's why these experiments are producing results that are more desirable. Right, so I'm going to go here, and with chainmail picked, I'm going to give it a little bit more cushion for this thing to settle and see what results I get. I don't like these results at all. They don't look good to me. And that might have something to do with the fact that I skipped a little bit on the resolution. No, I should have gone on the more quadded result, but no, I just don't like this chainmail setting. It doesn't work. Let me try one thing I haven't tried yet, which is the heavy denim. These results aren't that bad. I'll just store them. And I am going to try my default settings one more time. Let me look at this. Yeah, it's not bad. Some of these are not bad. A lot of data as it travels up, but I can get rid of that. Go back pick my default nCloth. See what that gives me. Yeah, one of the great things about default settings is because it's really light material, when it settles, it just droops nicely. So I'm going to store this, and I'll just run a few more tests to get different simulation types, but I really like these ones with the default setting. Yeah, very nice, simple folding. Act really well as a base baked creasing data. This is really nice, very nice. So I'll do a few more with the same settings. See if I'm able to yield other results, so I can have a whole bunch of them to pick from. And I'll be back with a handful of simulations with the same settings, so I can take a look. We can take a look at them. All right, so what I ended up doing was going back and modifying the topology to get some significantly simpler results or less resolution. And I actually this time just added edge loops myself to get more quads than strips. You could see this is manual application of edge loops, just so I get more squares, and the result is a lot better. All right, I'm getting something that I can work with. I like this. When this is smooth, if I was to hit 3, it produces a good type of creasing. So I'm not mad at this. This is pretty nice. So I will store this, and this is with default simulation, by the way. So this is on another viable result. Quite frankly, will be more than likely what I do go with. Yeah, I really like how it's some good folding. So I am labeling them over here. I think I did I changed a mask to 100 and got some this. And then I also run burlap previously. But before this piece, this is what I was going for. This is the default settings, nCloth settings, with these weird topology, this strip-like topology. And this is the one with the low topology that I like. So yeah, this one I hit 3, works. Let me go check the other side. Hit 3. Yeah, this is really, really nice. I think this will work very well. So I think that's it for the sleeve simulation. I might try one more of this, see if I get just a second result to compare this to. I'm actually going to try one more thing before I wrap up the sleeves, and I'm just going to apply smooth to this now that I have nice clean topology. So I'm going to hold down shift, right click, and apply a smooth of 1. And I don't have to delete history, I should be fine. And then I'm going to try to simulate with the default settings. I might get a significantly better simulation. So I'm going to just hit interactive playback. And yeah, it seems like it's going to produce something really good. Yeah, I can see it already. It's gonna really work. And yeah, it's great. It also looks good. So I'm going to duplicate these two, place them side by side with the end result. Yeah, not bad at all. I think this is good. So I'm probably going to go with this one. And I'll play around here up top to get what I want, so I can stitch it to the main piece. Yeah, this is pretty nice. I really, really like what this produced. All right, so that's this is for the crop jacket, and then this one is for the baggy one. So it's done with the sleeves, and the ones that I want are on the farthest extremes. I have all the creasing information I want. All right, so it's time to move on to the final thing to simulate, and that's this torso for the oversized hoodie. Anyway, so the goal here is to take this, and let me see if I can create a copy of this. just in case I need to make some additional changes. And what I'm going to do is pin this top area in place with transform constraints. So I'll go to the FX menu. Actually, I first have to turn this into an nCloth. So I'll create nCloth. And then I'll pin this in place. So I'll go constraint, transform constraint, edge, constraint, transform constraint, and this color area to transform constraint. Then the only transform constraint which is going to be helping me get the result I want is the one down here. Well, it's the only one that's going to be animated. So I'm going to go constraint, transform constraint, and I'll give myself those 1000 frames. And the objective here is to grab this one, and I'm going to be controlling the scale. So the first thing I'm going to do is set a key on it at the current position on scale. Actually, I will set a key on everything, all the nodes. And I am going to go to the nucleus and just temporarily disable it so I can set these keys. So I will disable the nucleus, and I'll go to this, and I will come to about maybe 40 frames and scale it down to 0.8. And I want to see what this does initially. So I'll go back to the nucleus and enable it, hit play. There it is, it's simulating now. I don't know what the hell is going on. Yeah, and those are some of the creases I'm looking for. The ripple all the way in, and 0.8. I'm going to stop the simulation, and the next order of business is to, I'll set a key here again, and I'm going to disable the nucleus one more time, disable it, and to this point I'm going to scale it down just a little bit more to maybe like a 0.75, and then I'm also going to move it up so that it meets the elastic. Oh, let me just start again and see what this yields. To stop that, make sure I re-enable the nucleus. Let me stop this and inspect it. I want to be able to pull out a part of it, so I'm going to see if I can do that with let me see if I can create a constraint in this part and just pull it out. So I'm going to go to transform constraint, and then I'm going to set a key here for this constraint, and then over here I'm going to pull it out just a little bit so that it can come out, and then just go back and down. And let me see what this does. Well, I would have had to disable the constraint until it was time. So let me actually stop this, rewind, and make sure that this constraint is, I'll set a key to enable it, and over here I'll make sure it's off and set a key. So I'll go back, just so when the first portion is happening, this second constraint doesn't impact the simulation. And so now that it's done that, I'm waiting for the last constraint to just yank it out a bit and see what results. It pulls it out and goes back, but I realized that then at this stage, one thing I should do is release it. So I'm going to stop this, and at around here. Yeah, this is a good one. I'm going to key it, this constraint enabled, and then just release it here so that it releases the cloth and allows the cloth to settle. So I'm going to start again and hit interactive playback and go through this again. Okay, so right there it yanks it out, and then it retreats, and now I'm waiting for it to be disabled so that it can release. So it gets right there and should release it. Okay. And now I'm gonna give it an opportunity to settle. All right, so I think that's enough settled. This is not bad. It's an interesting result. So I'm going to stop this and I'm going to duplicate this. This is with sculpting. So I'll duplicate that, move it to the side. And I just realized that I do want to try another approach that I think I might be doing too much with the translation upwards. I don't think I need as much translation upwards. So I'm going to rewind this thing, delete this last constraint, I don't need it anymore. And I'm just gonna counter this constraint. And this one over here, this upward movement, I'm going to try to minimize it. Actually remove it altogether. I will break connection with the translation. And I'm just going to count on scale. So I am also going to delete this keyframe here and just count on scaling. So scaling from a 1 to a 0.75. Or in actuality, let me go to a 0.7, just see what that feels like. I'll go back and I will hit interactive playback. Yeah, these are some good creases, but I think I'm wrong about not needing to go up. I think I do need to go up. I am going to come to this keyframe here and go up a little bit, a longer frame range. So I'm going to undo that, make sure I have set a key here. So I'll set a key on translation, and then around here I will move up, and that's enough frames to do this upward movement to allow this thing to then sort of like drape and billow out or expand out. Yeah, that's what I'm looking for it to then sort of arch out more to accommodate the upward movement. But it really does need to settle because there are some shapes that are happening that I don't particularly like. I like this, but I do need to be mindful about the fact that there needs to be a pocket, needs to come on top of this, and it's a pocket that I'll do at sculpt time. So I don't want this lower half to be as busy as it is right now. Let me tumble to see what the result is. Yeah, it's really nice, but yeah, I think that's as much settling as it's going to do without me yanking out some of this stuff. And it's pretty cool. It's not bad at all. It's a viable solution. I'm gonna stop it, and I'll take this as a second option. And then I think I am going to go with a solution that maybe yanks this a little bit. I think that yanking is necessary. Just pull it out a bit. So I do need this side to be just a little bit more. So I want to go here and add another constraint, a transform constraint. And I will set a key. Back, And another thing I'm going to do is grab this constraint, and I think this 0.7 is a little aggressive. So I'm going to go back to my 0.75 and go back and try this simulation. This is very similar to what I got here. I'll take that too and continue the simulation for the yank. Yeah, so those are enabled and they pull out, and this might not have the desired effect on release. I think it's too stretched out. It doesn't look like I did a release. Yeah, something went wrong. Let me go back to this and make sure I am in fact, okay, I didn't release, so I'll set a key. And another thing is, I feel like this might be just too much of a yank. So I have to do this again. It's another good result, so I'll duplicate that. Let's have more and more options to pick from. And continue simulation. Yeah, that release is aggressive and it might not have the desired result. Well, let's see what it does. It produces a big bounce after that release. Yeah, I don't particularly like this result. What I think I'm going to do is I'll get rid of this yank. And when it comes to this one, I realize I might simply be just going too high. I'm not going to try to meet my elastic. I'll move the elastic down if it has to come down, or I'll make adjustments with lattices to get this thing to meet the elastic. So I'm going to reduce that. Move up. I don't need to move up that much. And I'm going to simulate. This is actually pretty good. Yeah, looks like I didn't have to move up that much. I'm going to duplicate this and move it out the way. And just continue to let it settle. See what I get with a settled. Yeah, that's about enough. I don't think the results are that different. I'll just duplicate it anyway, compare it side by side, and I think that's it. I think this might be all I really need. It's time to start stitching these things together. Yeah, it's not that vastly different. Basically got some valid crease information by sculpting with simulation for the initial phase of these outfits. So yeah, I think this is it. I'm going to keep this and start stitching these things together and then also making some additional modifications to the cropped version. I want to do some cuts in certain areas, but yeah, I'm going to start stitching the simulated results together and send it to Zbrush for the rest of the work. So I'm going to start with the oversized hoodie. The two simulations that I like are the current one and this one. So those are pretty much these two over here. I will hide this. I've turned off the nucleus and everything nCloth related, so I don't have to get any simulations. I'm going to take these two and I'm going to zero them. send them back to 0. And the rest of these, I can just hide them. Yeah, I'll just hide them. Oversized hoodie, torso sim options. And hide those. And then I'm going to grab my 2 simulations for the sleeves and 0 those so that they can head back to location. And this looks pretty cool. I think it will attach nicely too. You just need to give it some cushion. And one thing I do realize, I'm going to drag my wristbands for the oversized hoodie back into the shot. And I think I might have made them too long. In some of the reference, it's not, they're not as big. I do like this sort of long, it contrasts the other one, so I'll take it. I'll just take how long it is. But the objective here is to, let me center pivot. And I want to attach it. Let me see if I can, in fact, if I go to object mode, whether I can move these 2 outward. Nope. I'll just have to move it possibly the same number of units. But the goal here is to just make sure I'm able to do the necessary minor adjustments. So let me grab this value and also put it in here in the negative. Just to, yeah, I think this will work. But what I do need to do is start grabbing these faces, go into soft selection, and making some adjustments to get something that is going to come to that's going to close a lot better. So what I want to do is grab this, and I'm going to grab these edges and do an extrusion. Let's see what this offers. Okay. Extrusion. And potentially do another one, center it, and squeeze these in. Yeah, then when I go into ZBrush, I will have to sort of smooth these out, or it's something I can even do here with the sculpting tools. I can take the smooth tool and just start to smooth these out so that they come to a more manageable termination. Yeah, this is not bad. Grab the face, use soft selection to continue to get something that just is less interesting as it approaches the point I want to terminate it at, like that. And a good amount of ZBrush manipulation will also be needed here. So I'm going to move this out a bit. Yeah, it looks like the rest of this could be handled in ZBrush. Let me see what it looks like there. Yeah, this will definitely have to be ZBrush's responsibility. Yeah, I might even close these holes in ZBrush. Let me see what I can get. Ultimately, yeah, this is a good starting point. So yeah, this will work. It's very baggy. I just realized how baggy it is. All right, let me do the same on this side. I think this side is a lot better. Yeah, so I'll leave that alone. and do the finessing of this edge in Zbrush. But what I will do now is focus on, I do have to make a decision about which of these two I want. Torso, option 1, and hide that. This one is really cool. Option 2. This one, I feel like it's a lot simpler, but it will require a little bit of modification with a lattice. I don't know if it's better than this. What I'm going to do is take both of them. So I'll create both. So that means I will duplicate this and add one to this layer, and then add the second one here. And for this one, I might leave it tapering down like this, although I wonder if I should do just a little bit of modification with either the soft selection tool or a lattice. And what I mean by that is just to take this, I might be able to take this face, double click to get the edge loop, hit B, and increase this and just scale it a little bit. But I'm not sure if that's something I want to do. I just want it to crescent out a lot better than it is. Let me go to the soft selection tool and increase the fall off, yeah, to about there, and then scale, yeah. Just get a little bit more of the billowing, if that's the word I'm even looking for. It's like that. Yeah. Yeah, that might be it, right? That might be it. Ultimately, I'm gonna have to do some simulation tests to see how well this thing drapes when it comes down. But yeah, so that's it for this part, and I'm going to stitch these two together. So I'm going to combine all these three pieces, go combine, and then I'm going to check the number of edges I have. So here I have 58 edges, and here I have 72. So I'm going to have to do a lot more adding of edge loops in strategic areas to get this thing to stitch close, because 58 and 72. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to add edge loops relative. I'm going to just start picking some random areas like this. Maybe somewhere here. Now it's 70. Looks like I was wrong. I need more. So I'm going to put one here and one there. And now I should have 72 here. Let me check the other side. So I have 63 and this 72 as expected. So I'm going to start adding some edge loops here. Make sure they don't go onto the other side. Don't go to the other side. 71, so I need one more. Okay, 72. So 72, 72, I can go to the modeling tools and do a bridge, and that should be fine. I'll smooth it out when I go to Zbrush and do another bridge here. And ultimately, if I stay decisive, I should just probably stick with this. The second option is cool, but I don't know if it's worth taking two. Option 1 needs to be in here. Yeah, this is also a cool option. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to pause the video and bridge it the same way and just so I have two options, and by the time I get to Zbrush, I'll decide which of the two I'm going with. All right, so I got this one also bridged. So here are the two options that I'll finalize my pick in Zbrush. But the last thing I want to do, or one of the last things I want to do, is deal with this elastic. It looks like it's going to be a lot longer than I expected. I didn't want this thing to be too long, but ultimately it's going to look weird if I just keep it short. So I'm going to bring this elastic down. That means the elastic covers a significant amount of the pants. And this is something I can also do in Zbrush. To be perfectly honest, I'll probably wait and go do this over there. Yeah, I think as far as Maya is concerned, and with the oversized hoodie, this is it. This is all the work that needs to be done here. So all the rest of it goes into Zbrush. So it's two options, this and this. And I'll decide which one is the final. And then I'll start worrying about how they attach to these things. And then the next thing I'm going to do in Zbrush before the detailing starts is to create the hoodie. And the hoodie has to make way for his ears because this character has ears, so I have to make two holes in the hoodie. I'm probably also going to get that started in Zbrush. And if I need to, I'll come back here. All right, so that's it for the oversized hoodie work in Maya. And now I'm going to move on to the cropped hoodie. All right, so with the cropped hoodie, the first thing I'm going to do is get the sleeves, the final simulated sleeves that I want into position. So I'll select them and zero them out too. And that brings them only about that far. It looks like I'm gonna have to position them myself in center pivot. Interesting. Bring it back. So it would be that much. Actually, I should get rid of this. This goes with the oversized wrist band. There we are. And hide it. And I'm going to drag back in the cropped wristband so I can get an idea of where this is supposed to be. And that's not bad. Yeah, I did want it to be some degree of baggy. So this is pretty good too. I can copy and paste these values into the other side, just make them positive, and I think I should be fine. No, I think this one needs to be -2, and this one might need to be, no, I would have to center the pivot for this one to get that 90-degree angle, and I would need a -90. Yeah, so that works too. Something like this I could fix here, it's not a big deal. And hit B and just make sure it's in. But the thing with these particular sleeves is, I think I did say I was going to do is I was going to attach it to this. So I do have to make an attachment here. First thing I want to do is just extrude upward. Initially, let me at least get an upward extrusion to the base over there. Yeah, that should be good. That's a good attachment point. And then I'm going to worry about the extrusion around it to the neck area. This is not what the hoodie attaches to, so I'm not particularly worried about how it ends up looking, because it's going to be underneath and it's more than likely going to collide with the cropped portion that's sitting on top. So I'm going to extrude this, go up to about that high. Yeah, that creates an interesting opening that I can work with. And I think from here, Smart thing to do will be to start bridging, so I can bridge this till I have like a reasonable opening. I can do the same thing here. And that's good, but might need a lot more work than that. Next thing I'm gonna do is put a edge loop right down the center, just one of this, and then grab these edges, just some manual modeling all these edges and move them down. Actually, I might need to grab this too. Move them down. Okay. And then I probably need to add another edge loop down the center here and down the center there. And move them to prepare for this bridge. So I will scale them in and move them out just to prepare for this little bridge. I'll do the same thing here and there. And there. Okay. So now it's time to grab these edges and continue to move this thing around so that it at least starts to look correct. And I'm going to turn the torso on very soon so I can see what I'm doing. This to that just to create a better opening. And I think that should be fine. If I were to turn on the body, see how it wraps around it. Yeah, a majority of this work will have to be done in Zbrush. I do think there's one more thing I could do here. It will be to add edge loops here, 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 and here. And then use my multi-cut tool to add an additional edge loop here, 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 and here, just so I could append this to that and this to that, add an additional edge, and then just do a target weld with vertices to get that to this. And I think that should suffice. The rest of the shaping of this will happen in Zbrush. What I now need to focus on is making sure I can bridge this to my sleeves. And that's going to be really costly as far as the amount of edge loops I have to add. And scale these in here just so I have a little cushion. Even this is a little messy. I might end up, well, I will definitely end up smoothing this out in Zbrush. But let me find out how many edges I have. So I have 36 here and nowhere near 36. So I'm going to have to add as many edge loops as possible. So yeah, 36 and 10. So I'm going to just get started doing it. And I do want to add some more edge loops to this thing here. I could afford it here, just to make it look at least presentable as far as meshes are concerned. There's a mistake here. I don't know how this happened. Must have selected an edge loop and moved it. Okay. All right, so I should be able to add all the other edges that I need in Zbrush, but I'm gonna go here and do the bridge. Go bridge and bridge. Looks like I picked the wrong edge. Bridge, okay. So that should close it up. And so the sleeves are attached to what they're supposed to be attached to. And now there's a little bit more work to do for this thing here. The other modifications I'm going to make in Maya for this thing are related to this piece and this pouch. So I don't really need 1/2 of it because I can do what I want on 1/2 and then go replicate, just mirror in ZBrush. So I'm going to delete 1/2 of this. Let's go to face, grab this, delete 1/2, bring everything back. And when it's time to simulate this thing during animation, I want to be able to connect this pouch to the sleeve here with a component to component constraint. So I just want to make sure that topology is at least flowing in a way that will allow that to happen. So I'm going to add an edge loop here, like right there and there. I know I need those for certain. And then I'll just add some more just to give it the proper surface it needs to have. And then for this, I'm going to move a couple of points along the normal. So I'll grab these vertices and grab my move tool and move along the normal, and just so that I'm moving on a normal surface. Yeah. And I'll go shading, wireframe unshaded, so I can at least get to those locations, those points. And do the same thing here. Yeah, just so I have some points in their appropriate vicinity. To be able to do a good component to component constraint. Yeah, I think this is good. I'll move this a little bit up. Yeah, so I have something to receive this, and connection will be somewhat seamless. More than likely have to add an edge loop down the center to be able to receive that one. Okay, so then they're fairly the same. And then the next thing I'm going to do is prepare for this zipper that's going to be sitting halfway across this thing. So I'm going to add some edge loops here, there, and there. And I know that the zipper is going to be zipping from 1/2 of one side to the other half of the other side. So I'm going to prepare for it by extruding inward. Yeah, and that should be the zipper compartment. And then just to make sure I have a flat surface to be able to draw a zipper on, I'm going to clear out this edge. I'll delete points, and I will have to terminate that properly because I have more than likely created n-gons. So I'm going to make sure I take the multi-cut tool and reroute this over there so I can delete this edge. Make sure I delete the correct way, and I'll do the same thing here. So I will then now delete this edge too. And there, I have a surface to at least route a zipper across, but it is a little crooked, so I need to deal with that now. This should be fairly, let me go back to my world, make sure I have like a fairly straight surface to be able to draw a zipper, a ZBrush zipper across. And come down like that. And you might just need to make some other adjustments. I might have to end up lining this thing up all over again. And also, with what I've done, it would mean that, well, I don't have to, but it'd be smart to just bring this down so that it feels correct as far as the zipper going right down the center. I'm going to center this pivot and move it up a bit. Okay, make sure I have it there. And sure that this thing connects correctly. Like that. Okay, so these are the preparations for the pouch and all the work that will be done on it. I think this is good. Yeah, a lot of this can be done in ZBrush, so I'll refrain from doing too much now, but I think I have something fairly good. All right, so that's that. And now I do want to attach these two in the same way I did the rest. Let me look at how many edges I have. 19 versus, let me combine it. 19 versus 18. So I just really need one more. So I'll just add one here, combine these two, and do the bridge. Select these two and bridge. But I really don't need this additional edge, so I can select it and delete it. And there it is. So it's connected, and I can now take it to ZBrush and do the rest of the work that it needs. Okay, and then now there's one more thing I would like to do, which is add some tears and tatters in Maya. I actually do also want to delete this half of the torso. I don't need it. It will be recreated in ZBrush when I mirror. So I'll clear that out. Okay, for the tears and tatters, I want them to be on the lowest portion that doesn't have too much detail. And I'm just going to add an edge loop here. I do want it to be symmetrical. I probably add more than one edge loop, so I'll add another one here. And what I want to do really is delete these two faces for starters and produce extrude to simulate a tear, and then probably bridge this to that. So this is like a tear. And then the other thing I would do is use the multi-cut tool to create another tear like this. And just delete this. Yeah, so that gives me a little tear there too. And I will more than likely go and mess around with this in ZBrush to get some varied results because I don't want it to look all the same. Let me try another type of tear, maybe starting from here, coming like that, and then stopping there. And then I can delete these faces, but I have created an end gone, so I have to make sure I use the multi-cut to add a point there. Yeah, so this gives me some type of tearing. And I'll create something on the other side, not exactly the same. I will go to edge and extrude this and extrude this, and then just bridge them to get a similar effect. Okay, so that's the tearing. All right, I'll play with it some more in Zbrush, but that's it. That's all the work that needs to be done in Maya. So now it's time to, at least for now, so now it's time to ship all this stuff to Zbrush. All right, so here we are in Zbrush with everything. I'm going to put everything in their respective folders. Start with the cropped hoodie stuff. So I'll hide the baggy hoodie updates. And I'm going to start dragging all this into its respective folder. Okay, so this is the end result. Let me turn on his head, his body and his head just to see what's going on. And also his jeans. I want to make sure I can see them. All right, and I'm going to start here. And this was one of the first things I said I was going to fix to smooth this out. And reduce that. I will turn on symmetry, but I'll be very careful because obviously this is not a symmetrical piece when it gets to the sleeves, but for the torso, I want it to be symmetrical. So I want to smooth it so it gets back behind the overlaying cropped jacket portion. Okay, so I'll smooth that out. And I will also move it into position like that. Yeah, this is good. I might even leave this. Actually, no, it's not necessary. It's never going to be seen, and I don't want let me solo this. Yeah, I don't really want that information over there. It's not necessary, so I will do some smoothing here just to get rid of that complex shape. I really only need what's on the outskirts here. Turn on double, and yeah, this is a good piece, starting point. So I'm going to move this in, and I'm going to grab this one and just activate symmetry, mirror and weld. And that is weird, but it looks like it. I would need to flip it around. So I'm going to go to deformation and rotate by 180 degrees and mirror and weld. Yeah, and now it will behave. So I can send it back, and I should be able to do the same thing with this. Rotate it by 180 degrees, mirror and weld, and then do another 180, and it should be back to where it is. Activate symmetry, so it changes echo across, and that should be it for getting everything in place. And now it's time to do the necessary cleanups and detailing and moving of this to make sure it is doing the right thing. Might even need to close holes here, but yeah. And then the next thing to do would be the hoodie, and that's it for this piece, for this lesson, this particular piece. Let me continue to make sure that this is positioned correctly. All right, so yeah, for this techie piece, I think it's coming together fine. I do have to be mindful about this and how I want this to show up, if I want it to show up at all. Yeah, I'll have to decide what I want to do. I really don't care for it. I just want it to be sitting under there and simulate. I don't want it to contribute visually. I know what I want this thing to look like as far as final result. So this really doesn't matter. It's just an additional simulation piece that I have to worry about, that I wish I didn't have to worry about. But it needs to drape, and this thing needs to sit on top of something. So I'll work on it when I get that hoodie in and I know how the hoodie is gonna work. All right, so that's it for the cropped piece. And I think for the oversized hoodie, I just have to get it in here and decide which of these two is going to be the final piece. This is big. I didn't really think about how big this was. It's a really large hoodie. Might be even significantly bigger than the one in the reference, but I could still change the size if I wanted to. I could really bring it down some. It is gigantic. So when I do add the hoodie, before I even start detailing this thing, I definitely want to simulate it to see how it simulates. That's the most important thing. And it looks like like I mentioned, I will have to accommodate how baggy it is. Like, so yeah, this might have to happen depending on which one I decide to go. I think no, it's about the same distance. Okay, so let me get the hoodies in first, and then I can know where things are heading. And I've decided to go with this one. This one is just maybe a little too, I don't like how it just spreads out by default. This one feels like a more natural hang. And I think that other creases during simulation this will complement the creases that happen during simulation. It's looks really cool. So I'm gonna let go of that first one, just have it sit in there. And I'm going to append a cube. And this is a very unique looking hoodie. I did remember that I do prefer to use plane. So I'm actually gonna delete this. And I'm going to append a plane. And I will reconstruct the subdivision levels till I have about that much is fair. I will delete higher, and then I will extrude all polygons. We'll extrude all polygons and just get a cube. I'll go in this direction. And this is what I will start using to get this hoodie. The first things I'm going to do is get rid of the faces that I do not need. This one and the bottom one, I'll delete hidden first, group by normals. This bottom one, delete hidden, show double, and get started. I could also use an edge loop here, so I'll insert a single edge loop here. Turn on symmetry just temporarily and start trying to achieve just a basic shape for this thing. As I mentioned prior, he has ears and I have to accommodate them, so I'm going to make holes in this thing to accommodate his ears. very unique place in which I want the ears to be. I want a majority of this thing to cover his face when the ears are slipped into the gape that I'm going to create. Okay, now that I have this, I'm going to turn off symmetry and start doing the necessary overlap that I have to do for this thing. I am going to divide this thing just to get some more polygons and start positioning it. And I'll more than likely need a lot more than what I'm playing with just to be able to shape. Okay, so this is I will have to accept that this is a very asymmetrical piece, so I'm not interested in making it be symmetrical in any way. It has some very unique folding that I want, that I'm seeing in a particular reference that I'll be shooting for. And one thing I did resolve to do was, actually I might want to be very careful with this though, because I do want this top area to have symmetry. So what I will do is I will mask, I'll be very careful when it comes up top here until I get those holes in there. I want to be careful to preserve some kind of symmetry in the back here. So I'm going to invert that, and I think I should be able to do no, a smart symmetry. Yeah, smart symmetry should level it out, the unmasked portion. And yeah, whenever it comes to that back area over there, I'll do that. And I also want to make sure this is a different poly group so that I can manipulate it separately. Yeah, this should allow me to move it by itself. Yeah, I should be able to now move it by itself. And what I'm looking for is the overlap for this thing. In order to simulate this thing comfortably, I'm going to have to attach it on the inside with a component to component constraint, because I can't think of where else to do the attachment. I don't want to weld the geometry together, because then I end up with what would be two edges, three faces meeting at an edge, a single edge, and I don't want anything like that. It usually returns geometry errors when you do things like that. So I will refrain from that. Okay, so this is pretty much the basic idea of what this thing is. I'm going to invert and get this part of it. And we'll just divide one more time. I should be able to continue my manipulation with this. Invert it and then continue this interesting overlap in the center. Okay, I think this is the basic idea. And as I say, when it comes to this back here, well, I can sculpt ultimately as soon as I'm done sculpting. If at any point in time I want to match the symmetry, I can just mask and go smart sim, and it will just make sure that back area is all level. Now, let me smooth this out. Now I'm going to start working on that opening. Think about how big it's going to be. Since this is symmetrical, let me one more time just make sure that everything up top here is symmetrical. I'll mask, invert, and do a smart sim. Okay, and that should be somewhat okay. Okay, now I'm going to grab my, let me duplicate this just out of the original copy. And I'm going to grab my Z remodeler and start with my deletions. So I will see if I can go down to a lower subdivision level. Yeah, maybe this is better. I'll delete higher, delete lower, and right click, go delete, and delete single poly, and then just start clearing out this region. And I should have had symmetry on, so I'm going to do that. Turn on symmetry so that you can get deletions on both sides. Definitely want to delete that. Yeah, might have added an edge loop instead of deleting. Okay, so that is a good hole. I'm going to do some shaping, symmetry on for this top area. Something like that. I do want to be careful up front here about how I make it, how I make that hole. I do want to keep this little thick, these two rows. So I'm going to right click here and go extrude and return some of this geometry back. Okay. And just extrude all the way down, just to get it back, and then start to position it. Better. Like that. So yeah, this is the preliminary work for that hole. The final shape of it, I don't want to decide on that now. There are some things I want to do back here so that I have I already have some slack, or some loose hanging slack. And it's pretty much, I want to bake in a particular shape, but that will happen in the next lesson. I'm only interested in completing these blockouts. This lesson has gotten a little long. What I will do is I'll try to put a hook here in preparation for what I'm about to do, just a little extrusion. All right, so yeah, this is going to work. One thing I should do is a resample. Let me see how that works. Let me duplicate this, turn off symmetry, and do a Z remesh at maybe 2K. That's too much. I'll go to 0.1. Let's get like some nice even distribution. No, probably want to stay away from that. Let me try doing just a Z remesh. I really just want some more topology at this front part. So if I can just get it there, that would be great. Let's see if I remember that used to be a thing you could do. So let me see if I can just do a Z remesh of this. And that's not too good. So I'll leave it alone. Actually, let me see. Just, looks like I have just too little. Let me try 1K. Yeah, this is not bad. It gives enough topology to do some blocking out, at least. So this up. Solo and just isolate this a little bit by shrinking group visible, so I have a different poly group and I can mask and make some modifications to this thing. I'm gonna start doing some of the shaping that I expect to see. For a hood. Not too much though, I'll just really leave all this for the next lesson. All right, so the next thing I want to deal with is the pocket. So the pocket that sits over the front, so you can slip his hands in there. It's going to be a little tricky, and probably before I get it, I should focus on making sure this elastic connects well. I don't want to ruin any of this good folding that this thing has given me. I have to be very careful. But one thing I do have to do is probably do an extrusion. This is probably something I could have done in Maya. Let me see if I can do it here with less penalty. Duplicate, and I will go to my Z remodeler tool, and I will right click on the edge and go extrude. I'm gonna go to edge loop and do that. Get something and then start to clean it up. And it's going to be a little tough to clean this up. That might be too messy of an extrusion. I'm gonna try again with some different settings. I'm going to right click on an edge and extrude. And I'm gonna try a perpendicular angle this time around. See if that's a better choice. It's still a little messy, but I have a plan that I think will work. I'm going to polygroup by this polygroup by polyloop. So I'll go like, not that, but the other way. And then I'm going to isolate this. Mask, invert the mask, and then do a deformation polish by features. Yeah, that should clean it up a bit. And let me keep going to see if I can get some really nice pristine result. This is as good as it gets, and I'm going to use the move tool to get some parts of it out of there. That's not the move tool there. I don't have my move tool. Just really pull this stuff out. Okay, that should be good. It's not bad at all. Let me try the polish by features again, and yeah, that should be a lot better. And then I'm going to add another edge loop with insert single edge loop. And I'm going to use my Damien standard to pull that out, just to get a nice little rounded result. This should make for somewhat of a nice connection to the elastic. And I think now it's time to modify that elastic. So I'm going to move it so that it connects to some extent. So it just injects into this like lip that I've made a lot better. And yeah, that's good. As long as it injects. Yeah, I can't wait to test this thing and see how well it behaves. For now, I'm going to do a dynamic subdivision for this thing. I'll turn on dynamic subdivision. I will remove smooth from it, add a thickness. That is too much of a thickness. And I would really like to add the thickness in the opposite direction. Over there, so it goes closer to the body. Yeah, about that thickness, and that just helps me to visualize this thing just a little bit better. And I should probably work on this next, making sure that attaches nicely. But in preparation, I'm also going to add a thickness over here. And in this instance, just because I know what's going to happen during simulation, I think the thickness should go the other way around. So I'll add dynamic subdivision, I'll add a thickness. Or actually, it can go as it's going right now, evenly from both sides. It's gonna work like that. Maybe just a little bit more, yeah, like that. And let me see how well I'm going to be able to adjust these two as a collective. Okay, I might need to do some better fitting. This, yeah, like that. Just so I can close. I really should turn off symmetry because it's not going to be the same on either side. So I should just focus on this side first. Make sure it connects reasonably. And then I can go to the other side. And really with something like this, it's expected to overlap in an interesting way. So I should start pulling this with the Damien standard to get it to overlap just a little bit better. Okay, that will have to do. And go the other side. And that'll have to do for now. And start extending the same logic here. That looks good for now. And the last thing I'll add thickness to is this, and then I'll get moving on the pocket. So I'm going to add dynamic thickness to this, reduce smooth subdivision, increase thickness, just so I have something to play with, and probably let it go on the inside. Okay, so this is ready for all the work that will be done on it. I'm very interested to see how these will work during the simulation test, to get to keep all this and just hold it. I really like this technique. All right, we get the pockets, and then we'll do the work that needs to be done for the cropped one, and then I'll end the lesson here. Okay, to get the pouch, I'm going to try to echo the exact same detail that I have over here by just extracting. So I will duplicate this and divide it. And I want to turn on symmetry and to just outline the shape, the typical shape that things like this have. I should actually do one more subdivision so I can get something a little bit more higher resolution. All right, so I'm going to extract this. Let me look at that again. That is a little too thick, 0.005. Extract. That should be good. I'll accept. And I think I'll take the copy that's closest to the surface and delete hidden to lose the rest. But now I'm gonna have a difficult time spotting it because it's actually, I might have made a mistake. First, let me delete this and go back and do that extraction again. So with the extraction, I want to make sure that I am extracting not double-sided, but outward. So if I go extract, yeah, it extracts outward, I accept. And if I solo this and grab the inside shell, let me unsolo, turn on double, okay, there it is. All right, now delete hidden and start working on pulling out the part of this that I need. If I solo, there are some parts that I really want to stay put, and I'm going to mask them so I don't have to worry about them. So I will mask the lip here and also this bottom side because I want it to stay put as I make the modifications I'm about to make. Then I'll grab my lasso here, and I also want this to somewhat stay put on either side. Yeah, like that. So when I come back, I'm gonna bring everything back and I start moving this as a collective. Yeah, I get to pull it out and not really get dealt the penalty of completely detaching it from its attire of the body. And I do want this to be just slightly open. Right? Only the parts that are attached, I want to have that flush. And this part of it is up to me. I might end up changing the sculpt data on it, but I don't think so. I think the sculpt data on it works. So I'll leave it alone. But it could be subject to change. One thing I should do is resurface it. Let me resurface it at a lower. Yeah, I might need to end up doing some of my own sculpt data on this. Well, on top of what I already have. So I will Z remesh at 2K. I don't want symmetry. I'm actually going to do it at 0.5. Yeah, that should. I feel more comfortable working with this. Let me pull this out. Actually, okay, there's a 0.5. Let me solo. And I should probably polygroup this part that I want to stay put so I can always return to it when I want to. So I will polygroup, not that. I might have to do it individually, single poly, and go in here and just okay. So now I can very easily mask and pull out what I need. And actually, to do some little bit of cleanup on these edges, I'm going to select them. These particular, the openings, I want to give them a polish by features. We'll just clean it up a little. So we'll convert. We'll mask everything. Bring this all back, and just do a deformation, polish by features, and that should, yeah, straighten them out just a little bit. So that should be the pocket, and keeping it on there will be my responsibility. to do some good sculpting. Make sure it looks right. Okay, so this looks pretty good. It's not crooked. It doesn't feel that way, at least. Yeah. So this should be fine. And like the rest, I'll just give it a dynamic thickness, and that should be it for turn off smooth. Give it thickness, but I want the thickness to be more outward. And this is just something to help me visualize as I sculpt. So that's it for this baggy one for this lesson. The next lesson for this one, I will start sculpting the crease data on this. I'll complete it, and then I'll start adding all the granular detail, the seams, the logos, and the stuff, and that should be it. That should be the asset ready. And I also do the necessary ribbing on the elastic part down here and on the wrists. So that's also something that needs to be done. Let me move this a little lower. Yeah, so this is a starting point for this particular piece. Very interested in resolving this, the creases here. There's some really unique creases in the reference that I really want to capture. There's actually one more thing that I do need to do. I have to be very careful, because if you look at this fit, I do need to hide this smooth version. Okay, if you look at this and I hit transparency, this is how much it will have to travel to hit the shoulder when you're in simulation. So I do need to give a little bit of slack to this top hoodie. So I'm gonna just make sure I select my mask pen and on perspective, just give myself just a little bit of breathing room, blur, and move up just a little, just so it's not so taut as it drapes. And I even forgot that in the next lesson, what I might actually be doing before doing this, all this detailing, is some tests. So I might actually be starting with some tests instead of, all right, so with the slack there, I think that's it for this. I'm going to put it inside its respective folder, which is not that. It's, nope, it's in the right folder. So I'm going to hide this and turn on the crop hoodie and worry about its hoodie. This one is a lot simpler. This is a more typical hoodie. So it's not going to be as complicated as this. I'll probably shave off this to create it, reduce this down to its original. Let me solo this. And I actually might be able to undo this enough times to get to the point where I had something symmetrical, because this hoodie for the most part is symmetrical. Okay, right there. Actually, no, that is, yeah, right there. So that should be a good starting point for this one. Let me move. Okay, I'm going to start giving this the same treatment now that I've reached that halfway point. I do have to turn off symmetry, at least for this portion. I am going to divide it one more time. I'm going to give it dynamic subdivision like I did before. So dynamic subdivision, no smooth, give it some thickness, have the thickness go outward, or actually inward. Thickness, yeah, should be fine. Yeah, that should be cool. And I should be able to blur this and move it up a little, so I have a little bit of slack. All right, so that's it for this lesson. That's all I'm willing to do in this lesson. So this is like the block out of both of these attires, and the detailing of it will come in the next lesson. I'm still deciding what I should do in the next lesson, whether I should run an early test for both of them, simulate both of them and see how they will work. I think they're going to be fine for the most part, but yeah, it might be a smart idea to do that testing before I proceed to detail, because I suspect that some of these might not drape as well as I thought, or there might be some things that I might need to change early on. But it's very unlikely with Zbrush, even if I were to finish this thing and I found out that it wasn't simulating well, there's a lot of changes I could do at lower subdivision levels to fix it. But to be on the safe side, maybe it's just something I should get out the way as a test with a proxy rig. I'm going to give this thing thickness. Also go geometry, dynamic subdivision, mode smooth, add thickness, and that should be fine. Yeah. Let me put this in the right folder. Actually, that's not the right thing. What's that? Okay, put it in the right folder. And I'll see you guys in the next lesson, where I either run tests or go into the detailing. It might be split over 2 lessons, or I might do both of those things in one sitting. Just run the test and then finish the detailing, because there's a lot of things that need to be done. There's straps over here. There's also a lock stop that comes out of this hoodie, and hoodies also have to have their creasing data put in. And I also have to decide what I'm going to do with these things. All right, so I'll see you in the next lesson. Either be testing or detailing or both.